All right. So for today, just so everyone kind of has an overview of how I like to do these. For every presentation, I like to cover different topics. We'll cover everything from the basics, getting out and going over some demo stuff in the cage, film breakdowns. We're going to do some film breakdown today, and really everything about the goalie position. I like to cover it really from a player perspective and a coach perspective to make it most useful for everyone involved. So today, the three things we're going to touch on today, we're going to go through technique, specifically arc play. I feel like, especially during these times where people seem to be reflecting a lot more and spending a lot more time on what they can do better, things their goalies can do better. Arc play seems to be a pretty consistent one that comes up. Shots on the run, these can be very difficult. A lot of goalies struggle with these, whether it's moving too much, losing the ball a little bit. So we're going to touch on some shots on the run. And then throughout the session, we're going to weave in some film work, um, showing examples, good examples and bad examples of both good arc play, bad arc play, and then what some shots on the run look like, how we should be playing those. Okay. Really quick, I always like to start just so everyone can be on the same page throughout the session. Kind of my philosophy when it comes to one, now mostly coaching the position and how it's evolved over time, and also my approach, how it's changed and what it looks like now from a playing perspective. I know we have some returners on here, so this will be a little bit of a repeat, but I always think it's a good thing to go over right off the bat so everyone can be on the same page when they hear the terminology I use. They know what I'm talking about throughout the session. So really quick, three of my keys for goaltending: simplicity. All right, whether you're a player or a coach or a parent, I firmly believe that keeping things simple, keeping things easy to understand is the best way to go about playing and learning the position. All right, you see a lot of goalies and a lot of coaches who, when they teach goalies, they try to get very intricate with the way they approach it. They try to get extremely detailed with how they approach it, which, don't get me wrong, it's important to look at the details and be detailed throughout coaching and playing. But the simpler you can keep things in terms of the way you approach the position and the way you coach the position or communicate the position, I think it's really important. And I think, as a goalie, from a mental standpoint, the easier and more simple you can keep things, the more you'll be able to just go out on the field and just play and react and know what you're doing. All right. The second thing for me is efficiency. It's something that the goalies I work with hear a lot. Okay. Essentially, how can we get from point A to point B as quickly and as explosive as possible, right? Without having too much waste in movement, without overstepping to the ball, without throwing our hips forward or kind of flailing our body at the ball. Everything we do and everything, when we think about making saves, we want to be efficient. All right. And it's doesn't always mean the most technical way to think about something, but simply how can we get from point A to point B, where we start to where the ball is going and we need to get to make the save as efficiently as possible. And this third one for me, this has been a recent development for me as I've had a lot of questions and for myself had to think about goalies from an athletic perspective, whether it's how we train or how we play in the cage. So I make this Tom Brady comparison because when we think about, as goalies, the athletic traits we need in order to be successful in the cage, it's very similar when you think about a quarterback in football, right? When you hear the broad term athleticism, right away in football, your mind goes to Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, those kind of guys who are big, strong, physical guys, can run, can get downfield, can shake and bake a little bit. But when you think about the pure athletic traits that you need as a quarterback, there's nobody that does it better than Tom Brady, right? And he's not going to blow you away with speed. He's not going to blow you away with size when you look at him physically. But when you talk about having good footwork in the pocket, being balanced, right? His weight's evenly distributed when he's in the pocket, when he's throwing the ball, avoiding pressure in the pocket, right? Stepping up in the pocket, sidestepping in the pocket. Tom Brady does that better than anybody else. So when we talk about the goalie position, right, we don't need to necessarily be the biggest, the strongest, and the fastest player on the field. But what we need to be very good at is being balanced, right? Have our weight balanced when we're moving around on our arc. We need to be mobile and flexible. Okay, we need to mentally understand what we have to do to get the job accomplished, and we need to be very explosive and quick in short bursts, right? So when I like to think about that, that's where I developed this TB12, right? Focus on the things as a goalie that will help you develop your game. And as coaches, make sure you're putting your goalies on programs that will help them improve the areas they need as a goalie, rather than going in or training all these things that won't be helpful to them in the cage. All right. So those are kind of the three things I try to focus on when I'm coaching or playing the position. And dropping down into just some key phrases you'll hear from me throughout the session. And some of these, it goes back to what I said about simplicity. Some of these are just different ways of saying terms that I'm sure you guys have heard for a very long time. Drive behind the ball. That's just my way. That's what I like to say instead of telling goalies to step to the ball. Okay. Because for a couple reasons, I think as coaches, when coaches say step to the ball, they're trying to communicate, get your body behind the ball, right? Step to the outside of the ball, get your body behind the ball on your front step. But I think a lot of times when goalies hear that, they hear step to the ball, they step directly at the trajectory of the ball. And when you do that, you're not actually getting any part of your body behind the trajectory of the shot. Okay, so I like the term drive behind the ball, because from a psychological standpoint, when you hear that, you're thinking, all right, I need to drive my body, whether it be flat or whether it be on a 45-degree angle. I need to drive off my back foot and get my body behind the ball. All right, so that's what you'll hear me say rather than step to the ball. Okay, drive, don't pull. All that means is we want to make sure we are driving off our back foot. We're generating power from our back foot and driving, right? We don't want to step with our front foot and then use our front foot to pull the rest of our body. All right, we want to make sure we're driving off our back foot. 6-inch explosions. This for me just means, and for you guys, it just means we want to take 6-inch steps with our front foot and drive off our back foot. The way that, what that keeps us from doing is overstepping with our front foot. All right, we want to make sure as goalies, we're not taking too big of a step with our front foot where we then have a completely straight back leg and don't have any power or no way we can drive off of our back foot. All right, so we want to make sure we're controlled with our steps with our front foot. All right, head up, hands out. That's just a term that I use rather than bring your head to the ball. I think this is a more clear way of communicating how we're trying to make saves, right? We want to keep our head up. We want to keep our hands out and see the ball all the way into our stick, whether it's high, hips, or low. You want to see the ball all the way in. And what I found is a lot of times when goalies hear bring your head to the ball, the first thing they do when they go to make a save is drop their head. All right, but if you keep your head up and your hands out and see the ball all the way in, your head will naturally get down to where it needs to go. So that's just my way of telling you, get your head to the ball. Just a different phrase, something that I think just makes a little bit more sense. All right, last one here, front foot and top hand working together. All right. We are now in a time in lacrosse for a lot of you young goalies that are out there and coaches coaching the position. Guys shoot so hard now, you're never going to make a save with your body all the way behind the ball. You're never going to step and then drive off your back foot, gather, and then make the save, right? You are making that save more times than not when you're stepping with your front foot. Okay. So if your hands are a little bit ahead of your feet, you start to reach a little bit too much. And if your feet are ahead of your hands, then you start to just not get there quite in time with your stick. So as much as you can work on and as much as you can practice getting your front foot and your top hand in sync, you'll make a lot of saves, you'll move well, and you'll make a lot of clean saves with your stick. All right, the last point here before we move on that I always like to communicate with my goalies is train fast, train slow, play slow. All right, so anything you're doing, and this is great for you guys, you goalies who are at home now, training on your own, whether you're just trying to figure stuff out in your backyard or in your garage or with a parent. And for coaches, when you're training your goalies or you have them doing something at practice or a drill, you want to make sure you're training at game speed, right? Try to emulate game speed in practice and while you're working individually as best you can, so that when you get into games, it's natural, right? You feel like the game's not moving too fast. You feel up to speed. You feel like you can move with good fundamentals and good efficiency. If you train slow, if you train below game speed, you're going to hop into a game and you're going to lose a lot of the integrity with your fundamentals. So train fast, train slow, play slow. Okay. All right. So jumping into our arc play here, I'm just gonna go through first a few keys that I think are really important, regardless of the style of arc you play. All right, for me, what we're going to talk about mostly today is playing a flat arc, just because that is what I prefer to play. With that being said, I'm all for, if you like coming out a little bit further, if you like kind of playing that medium arc, I think that's fine. I think that's good if that's something that you're comfortable with. It's something you've always done. I think that's great. But for me, we're going to walk through a lower arc today. So if this is something you already do, that's great. And if it's something that might be a little new, just take in some information and maybe give it a try. So I think it's pretty helpful, especially in today's game. All right, but just some keys in general about arc play. I'm a big believer in the five-point arc, or 5 spots. I just think, I don't think 3 is quite enough. I think playing top center in the 2 pipes, I think you give up a lot of space all over the cage when you play that way. And I think when you start to talk about 7 steps, it's just a lot of movement. And what you'll see this last bullet point here, less is more in terms of how much you're moving in the cage. And when you start to play more of a 7-step style, you just end up moving a lot. It's a lot of little movements when you can kind of combine some of those spots. The first one for me is 5 landmarks. I like to think about them as landmarks. I know where my 5 spots are for top center, top right, top left, and pipe on each side. All right. And it's good to think about it this way for me, that I've found, because when the ball starts really swinging in a game, say the ball is back right and the ball is really moving, and all of a sudden there's a skip pass to top left. Instead of trying to kind of find the right spot in the moment, if you have trained your landmarks, I just have to get to my top left landmark, right? And you might be slightly out of position. You might not quite get there, but if you've trained those 5 spots and those same 5 spots enough, you'll get yourself in a pretty good position. All right. Staying square to the shooter. And this can be as a ball carrier. This can be as a shooter down the alley. Staying square to the shooter all the way through, whether they're just carrying the ball or whether they're shooting, will just keep you in good position. I like to think about it sometimes as if there are laser beams coming from my shoulders out, and I want to keep the shooter in between those laser beams. And we're gonna actually break down a clip here in a little bit that shows a bad example of a goalie not doing that, and it turns out to hurt them. But staying square to the shooter, that's a big one. One of the biggest ones that I've noticed is the third one here, and that's avoiding the pipe. All right, a lot of goalies, and myself included at times, we like to use the pipe as kind of a safety net. All right, it happens a lot when we have dodgers in the top corners and they're going down the alley. Or shots from the kind of that mid-high wing area. A lot of goalies tend to just hop to the pipe. And especially when you're talking about, if your stick is up against the pipe, you give up a lot of room to that offside, to that far side. And that's where goalies then, because of that, develop these habits of overstepping or overreaching for the ball, because they have to go further than if they were to just be in good position, staying square to the shooter and off the pipe a little bit. They wouldn't have to do those things. But again, we will touch on that a little more in the film. Last 2 here, adjustment steps. Okay, try to limit those as much as you possibly can. All right, I know there are times where you have to take little adjustment steps, but my rule of thumb is, if I can stay in one of my 5 spots, then that's an advantage for me. The more I'm moving, the more of an advantage the shooter has. The less I'm moving, the more of an advantage I have as the goalie over the shooter. And we touched on this last one, less is more. The less you can move, the better off you'll be. The more you move, the more room for error there is, and the more likely you're going to be out of position when there's a shot. All right, so we talked about, I'm going to be talking mostly about a low arc today. And what I mean by a low arc is, I like to play with my heels slightly off the goal line, and I will stay that way pretty much all the way around the goal. So no matter where the ball is, and I'm just making small adjustments, squaring up to the shooter and trying to sit a little more in the center of the cage. Okay.
Good. When you're taking adjustment steps, like, when do you know when to do it?
So for me, it varies a little bit. For me, if there is anything in the middle of the field, I'm playing my top center spot. If I have a dodger in one of the top corners, either top left or top right down the alley, I'm sitting. So say there's a Dodger top left dodging down the alley. I'm sitting in my top left spot until he crosses, in that case, my left foot. And once he crosses my left foot, then you can start to think about moving to the pipe. But what a lot of goalies do, and you'll see when we start to break down film, is they either start on the pipe or they get to the pipe too early. And a good rule of thumb that I found is once they cross kind of your back foot, or if on a dodge down the lefty alley, your left foot, that's a good cue. Okay, now I can move to the pipe. Okay, but if you're getting to the pipe before that point, I would say you're probably getting there a little bit too early. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, the advantages of a low arc is less movement. Okay. And like I said, the less you can move, the better. And the lower you are towards the goal line, the less you have to move, right? If you think about it, the higher you are, the more you kind of have to move in that little half circle. The lower you are, the more you can just play angles, and you're not really moving in any kind of circle. You're kind of just staying square to the shooter and taking slight steps to the side and staying square. All right. Better angle play. Okay. There's a thought out there that the higher you play, the more angle you take away. But that thought originated with hockey goalies. And if you think about hockey, when a goalie comes out at you, the shooter, is always shooting from the same angle, right? The puck is always coming from the ice in the same spot, right? Whereas in lacrosse, so it makes sense in hockey. But if you're talking about lacrosse goalies, if you step out, then good shooters can just counter that by extending their hands more or bringing their hands in a little less, because you have the extension of the stick. So the further out you go, the more shooters can counter that by just extending their arms and as a result, extending the stick and shooting almost around you as a goalie. So for me, I like to sit further back and allow myself to just react to the ball, and really kind of play the angles better from my point of view, giving myself more time to get over and get behind the ball. And you catch the ball on a better angle than if you step out. You're catching the ball. If you come out more, you're hitting that ball earlier on the trajectory. Whereas if you stay back, you catch that ball a little bit deeper and you give yourself more time to get behind it. More reaction time, and it's easier to drive behind the ball, or in other terms, step to the ball, get behind the ball, whatever, in any way you want to say it, getting behind the ball, because the less you're moving, the quicker you can be set and the quicker you're ready to go. You're ready to explode. If you either are playing that high arc, it means you're moving more, which means you're taking longer to get set. Or if you like to come out at the shooter while they're winding up, you're having to change direction twice. And when you change direction twice, you lose a little bit of explosiveness, you lose a little bit of balance, and you kind of lose the ability to drive off your midfoot. You become very top heavy on your toes when you have to come out and then go on a 45 to make the save, right? So it's less movement. And for me, it comes back to less is more. I like to just have one movement. But again, like I said earlier, there are guys who are extremely good at that. Perfect example is Dylan Ward. And I love Dylan's game. He's unbelievable at coming out and then adjusting from there. So some goalies are very, very good at that. That's awesome. It's a really good skill to have if you're very good at it. The problem is it's very hard to learn. It's a very much so a timing thing. And that's why you don't see a lot of guys do it anymore, just with how hard guys shoot these days. So for me, I like to sit further back on the goal line, and just react to the ball. Okay. We already talked about the keys. We have our landmarks, patience, and less is more, with that stuff. Does anyone have any questions on that stuff before we jump into a little bit of film here, just to go over some examples?
How do you feel about like rotating your hips to like follow the shooter before you take a step, like if they're coming down from center?
I think the only thing you have to be really careful with that is you can't rotate too much, because then you're in an awkward position where you don't have your shoulders over your feet. You're kind of turned with your shoulders and your feet are pointing a different direction. And then it becomes a little hard to move. So if you're going to do that, I think that's fine. But I would stick to kind of the point of once they cross your foot, you have to then move with your feet. You can't just keep rotating your shoulders and keeping your feet locked, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we are going to hop into some film here. All right. So these are just arc plays examples. These are clips of two guys, one Caton Johnson, who's the goalie at North Carolina, and Trevor Tierney, who played at Princeton for a long time. And we're using these two guys. I've worked with Caton for years, and Trevor helped me while I was at Denver. And they're two guys who play the low arc very well. And they do a good job of showing you guys what we're looking for when we're talking about playing a low arc. All right, so this is one of my favorite clips. Just a great save here. So we'll start with the initial save. Okay, and talking strictly about the arc play here. Notice how Caton here, okay, so we're looking at the ball top right here. Okay, Dox Aiken has the ball here in this top right corner. All right, he's in a position where by this point you can tell he's probably going to take the middle of the field. But coming into the dodge, he can either take the alley or he can take the middle of the field. Caton's already in this spot for the ball to be top right. So if Dox were to take the alley here, Caton may just have to, all he has to do is take his left foot and bring it up a little bit, and he's squared to Dox all the way down the alley until he has to get to the pipe. But in this case, Dox is taking the middle of the field. So Caton has to get to his top center spot. Watch how little bit of movement Caton has to make to get there, because all it is for him is a drop step back to the center of the cage.
Is the video playing right now?
No, it is now.
Okay.
So you should see it now. Okay, so we'll watch it again. Are you guys seeing the video?
No.
We can't see it.
No, you can't see it.
You have to reset the share screen. It was a glitch during school too.
Oh, gotcha.
Correct.
Nice.
There we go.
You guys got it now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you for letting me know. Guys, if there are any issues or the video's not coming through clear, you don't see anything, just feel free to speak up. Okay? Don't be afraid to speak up. All right. So start with this again. So what we're looking at here is a dodge from Matt Moore. It's not Dox Aiken. It's Matt Moore coming from the wing. So he started kind of on this high wing here. All right. And Caton is in that top right position. All right. And right now he's starting to take an adjustment step to get back to top center. But he's starting in this top right position right here. Matt was in a position he could either take the alley or he could take the middle of the field. All right. He chooses to take the middle of the field, or he beats his defender and gets the middle of the field. Because Caton has done a good job, right, of not getting to the pipe and staying back on his line. All right. Watch how short of a step Caton has to take to get back to top center, right? Because he has to readjust. Once Matt gets the middle of the field, and you'll see he gets the middle of the field and Caton has to readjust. Because of how flat he is, watch how little of a movement he has to make to adjust to top center. Right? He's very patient, okay? Watch from this point on. So what you'll see is here he's set. And from this point on, I'm playing it in slow-mo right now. Watch. He looks like a statue. He takes one step to get top center and then makes the save. Okay, and this is where you'll see a lot of goalies, and it happens when goalies play lower too, but especially when they're playing a little bit higher and they feel like they have to move a little more, they start to get kind of happy feet or a little jumpy, or they'll take a step and then a jump stop, or 1-2 step and then a jump stop. Watch how, and we're going to play it all the way through. Watch how fluid it's just one step back to the center of the cage. He's set, he's patient, and he sees it. Right? It's a very short movement. All right. And we're going to play this through here. Another one, right? Off a turnover. Same thing. Notice how patient he is. Okay. He's nice and back. He knows kind of off of a helter-skelter situation. You don't see him tapping the pipes at all. He knows, because he's nice and deep. He knows where he is. He knows he's top center. He's given himself a lot of time to react. But he makes the clean save. And he gets the ball up and out. They push in transition. And it turns into a beautiful goal on the other end. Right? So especially the second one, you can see, okay, because of just he knows where he is in the cage. He's nice and deep. He gives himself a lot of time to react because he knows he's staying flat. He's not coming out to the shooter. His feet are set. A lot of goalies you'll see who aren't really sure what to do in these situations, they start to panic a little bit, and they either start to get happy feet or they start to come out really far at the shooter, which again, when you're coming at the ball with your, whether you're trying to take a step forward in your arc or you're stepping at the ball after the release, you're then going at something that's coming back at you 90 to 100 miles an hour, right? Or for some of you younger guys, anywhere from 70 to 100 miles an hour, right? Whereas if you can just stay patient, stay back, right, and just react to the ball on your line, he puts himself in a really good position there. Okay. Guys, feel free to ask questions throughout, especially throughout the film. It's a good time to ask questions. Okay, so now we're going to dive into some Trevor Tierney here. And we're going to try to get through these clips relatively quickly here so we can move on to the on the run stuff. But again, it's the same concept. Okay, and what you'll see throughout these clips is notice how because of how deep he's staying in the cage, he's staying back on the goal line a little bit, staying flatter. He's always in good position. He's always moving with great efficiency, and he's relying on really good angle play to take up the cage. Okay, so all this first one is here. Okay, it's a step down. And notice he's in this, he's in the center of the cage. All he's done is he's squared up to the shooter. He's in that top right positioning. He hasn't creeped over to the pipe too much. All right, he's given himself as much time to react as he can. Okay, this one I really like here, okay, because this is another really good example of him, you know, trusting his training, being efficient with his movements, and keeping things very simple. All right, so you see the ball carrier here, side left. All it's going to be is a cut. So you're going to see a cutter into an inside finish. What I want you to watch is watch how little he moves when he goes from the pipe here to his top left spot. It's a very small movement. Okay, it's a very small, short movement. And that becomes really important because especially on these inside feeds, the faster you can move and get set, and you're going to see it too on a couple of these skip passes, the less distance you have to go means the faster you can get set, the faster you can find the shooter, and the faster you can pick up the ball off the release. Okay, so before the shooter even catches the ball here, off of a feed, this is probably about a 15-yard pass, okay, to the middle of the field, about 6-7 yards in front of the crease. Trevor's set before this guy even catches the ball. The shooter's about to catch the ball right now, and Trevor's already set, which means Trevor has all the time he needs to see the ball out of the stick. All right, he puts himself in a really good position to see the ball out of the stick. Okay.
Good championship game?
Yeah, this is the championship game against Princeton in I believe, 2001.
One.
How do you feel about like leaning on the pipes?
There's a couple of different ways you can do it. It sort of depends a little bit what you're comfortable on. My preference is I don't like to compromise my stance or my athletic ability to move just to take up the extra little bit on the pipe. So as much as you can, try not to lean too much. Some goalies like to put almost their shin up against the pipe just to make sure they're not giving up too much inside pipe. And I'll do that a little bit, but I like to really just stay in my stance. And what I like to tell myself rather than hold the pipe is just sit on your pipe spot, right? Make sure you're in kind of that good hockey goalie positioning where you're taking up as much of the cage as you can with your body and force the shooter to get to the middle of the field in order to put the ball around you and score. So if you're in the mindset of I'm going to stay on this goal line positioning until he gets to the middle of the field, and this is a really good example, and we're actually going to touch on this a little bit. You want to force shooters get to the middle of the field in order to put the ball around you, meaning you're holding your pipe as long as you can. And that doesn't mean being super skinny on the pipe or leaning up against it really heavy, but being cognizant that you're not bringing your body off the pipe as the shooter starts to come around goal line. Okay, but we're going to hop into this. Yep.
When like I'm at the age where kids are starting to use the low to high shot a little more from like GLE, like closer to GLE.
Yep.
Do you get like do you stay higher in your do you just stay in your same stance, or do you tend to play higher or lower like when the shots come from near GLE?
Yeah, I like to stay in my same stance the entire way. Again, I don't want to compromise my ability to move as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the best way for me to be in a position to go make a save is to maintain my good athletic stance. And that's especially on inside shots, right? Rather than trying to go early or trying to read sticks or match sticks, the more you can just sit in a really comfortable, good athletic position and force the shooter to put a good shot by you, you'll be shocked how many times you'll get hit with the ball. They'll put it in your stick, or you'll catch it with a foot. Or a lot of times you have to remember shooters, like goalies who try to go early or try to read sticks. Shooters are taught to get goalies to do that, right? So as shooters, smart shooters are thinking, I'm going to get this goalie to move one way and then put the ball somewhere else. Well, if you're patient and you just hold your ground and you're patient and you wait and react to the ball, if you don't go with that first fake, now the shooter's not quite sure. You kind of put them in a spot where they start to panic. And again, you put the ball in your court, now you have the advantage. If you don't go with that first fake, or you don't move the way a shooter expects you to, now you have the advantage, right? And shooters start to panic a little bit. Again, they'll miss the cage. They'll hit you in the chest with it. They'll hit you in the head. And you're going to see this in a couple clips with Trevor. He does a good job of staying patient on inside shots, and he ends up getting a few saves simply because he stays patient. All right, and this is a really good example, actually, right here. Okay, so we have a Dodger down the alley, and he gets the inside on his defender. Okay, so right here, pause it. Trevor knows. Okay, so Trevor's a smart goalie. He's now on his pipe, so he's holding his pipe, but he's in a good athletic stance. Trevor knows he has a slide coming from the middle of the field. So what Trevor's thinking right now is, I want to force this guy to get to the middle of the field and put the ball around me. So if this defenseman does his job and slides, Trevor knows that this guy's got to get rid of the ball. So the more he can hold his pipe and hold his ground, the more likely he is to steal a save here. And as I roll it, you'll see the defender does his job, right? They collapse on him. He even gets some help from X. This shooter panics. He's got to get rid of the ball. And he ends up just hitting Trevor in the chest, right? Because Trevor holds good position. He doesn't panic. And he doesn't give the shooter a lot to look at here. He holds his pipe. He stays nice and big. And the shooter just doesn't have much to look at, okay? Because he's got to get rid of the ball really early. And Trevor's able to just sit there and make a nice save. All right, so this is a really good example of how the lower arc can be really advantageous for a goalie. What you'll see here, the first thing I want to point out with Trevor, okay, look at the way his body's positioned. You see how his back foot is in towards the goal more. His chest and his top foot aren't squared up to the sideline. When Trevor sits back like this, with his top foot further back and his body further back, he's now taking up more of the cage with his body. All right, the other thing Trevor's putting himself in a really good position to do by being positioned this way is he doesn't have to drop step, right? And then he doesn't have to drop step so far and then find the ball. He's already in a pretty good position where you'll see here. It's an easy, just pretty much step across, a slight drop step. All right, a slight drop step, feed to the center of field. And again, Trevor, because he's playing nice and low, it's a shorter distance to travel, and he's nice and set, right as the shooter's catching the ball. All right, this is the last one here. And this is one of my favorite ones that I've seen of Trevor, just because it's really impressive how quickly he's able to get across and get set. So I'll play it all the way through here for you really quick. Oh. Right, and Trevor, on this one, he does a little thing where he kind of stands up and then gets set. And I think it's because he gets there so early that he kind of almost doesn't know what to do with himself. So he relaxes for a second and then resets. But watch, because he's driving straight across flat on the goal line here, watch, Trevor is there. He gets there before the shooter catches the ball, right? So Trevor's there and the shooter has just caught the ball. Okay. So because it's a nice direct point A to point B as quickly and as efficiently as possible, Trevor has plenty of time to get set and make the save. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on?
Would
We
you
good on that?
recommend
What's that?
for when you're going through your arc? Would you rather us do like a pro hop or kind of just like a step, kind of like he's doing? Is there a preference that you have?
It's kind of dependent on what you feel more comfortable doing. Some guys like to just have like the 1-2. Some guys like to have the 1 jump stop. Some guys feel like the jump stop just kind of puts them in a position to be a little more ready to go. That's up to you what you're comfortable with. Some guys are really good at that. Someone to watch who's really good at it is John Galloway. If you're kind of looking for somebody to watch who does it really well. And then guys like Caton and Trevor are very good at just going step, set, right? They're very good at that. So it's more about what you're comfortable with and what you like doing a little bit more. Okay. All right. If there's no questions on that, we're going to go back to the presentation really quick. And we're just going to quickly go over shots on the run before we hop into film. I think the best way to learn how to play a shot on the run is to watch shots on the run and kind of watch how guys are doing it. Just a couple things. My 2 biggest keys are limit your movement and try to stay off the pipe. Okay. At some point you will have to get on the pipe, but the later you can get there and the deeper the shooter has to get before you can get there, the better off you'll be. All right. And the reason I like to say stay off the pipe, you might be wondering why I'm saying that, is think about how shooters are taught to shoot. A lot of shooters naturally going down the alley want to bring the ball back across their body and shoot across the cage, right? It's how they can get the most power on their shot. It's how they can get the most accuracy on their shot. It's really hard to push the ball to the near side, okay? Especially if your stick is on the side of the pipe to the alley they're dodging down. You can even hold an extra second longer than you do on the other side to get to that pipe. All right, but just 6 quick keys to shots on the run. First, get to your landmark. So if you have a dodger top left or top right, get to your top left or top right landmarker and try to hold it. Try to really limit your adjustment steps and how much you're moving. If you have a dodger top center, get to your top center, and then whether they go left or right, you can make the proper adjustment to either side if you have to. Okay, limit adjustments. Avoid getting to the pipe. Okay, we talked about that. Staying back. For me, I really like to make sure I'm staying back and playing the angle well and giving myself as much time to react. A big one down, on shots on the run is patience. Be patient and be relaxed. So this is when a lot of goalies start to get a little antsy or start to tense up a little bit. If you're patient, if you see it, you'll save it, right? That's always got to be your mindset, especially with these shots on the run. If you see it, you'll save it. And the best way to see it is by being patient and relaxed, okay? And that'll allow you to explode and save the ball in a nice, efficient, explosive movement. And then the last piece is make sure you're driving behind the ball, right? Don't overstep with your front foot or kind of drop into the splits and reach for the ball. Make sure you're keeping your weight, underneath you. You're taking a good 6-inch step with your front foot, driving off your back foot and getting all the way behind the ball, okay? Here we go. We are going to hop now back into some film for you guys. Can you guys see this video? All right. Are you guys able? Yep. Yeah. Cool. It should be North Carolina and Hopkins.
No, you have to redo the video thing again. It's still in Princeton and Syracuse.
Gotcha.
Yep, you're good.
All right, we're good? Awesome. All right, guys. So this first example is a bad example of some. This is what you don't want to do with shots on the run. All right. So right off the bat here. All right. You can see that the Dodger is right here with the ball. All right. Very high in that top left corner. He's at the top of the box. And you can see, this is another clip of Caton here from North Carolina. He's already getting set on the pipe. All right. And I know this is his stick side. Okay. But what you'll see, especially as the ball starts to get a little deeper, because he gets there so early, he gets to the pipe so early, as the shooter continues to go down the alley, and I'll play it through for you here. Watch how he starts to tense up, right? Because he feels awkward, because he feels like he should move, because typically, and I know this because he's trained this way, he's trained not to be on the pipe. So when he does set up on the pipe when he's not supposed to, now he feels, you can see as the shooter goes, he feels like he should be moving, right? You can see him tense up, right? And he looks very crammed up against the pipe. All right. So what you don't want to do here is watch. So off the dodge, you can see Caton's shoulders. Caton's shoulders are almost facing the sideline. All right. And the shooter is nowhere within there. Okay. So what Caton would want to do here is take a small step off the pipe and kind of be playing a little more in the center of the cage. All right. And something to keep in mind. All right. And this is a good visual. All right. And we're going to look at another clip of Kyle Bernler where it's a really good visual. In this case, as the shooter comes down the alley, okay, this is Caton's off stick side. All right. The pipe is his off stick side. All right. So Caton is naturally on this side. And this is something probably for you high school goalies or for coaches to work on with your high school goalies. On this side, strategically, you have your stick on this far side. So you can be a little quicker on this side, on your non-stick side, to get to the pipe. All right. Because what that means is you're giving up a little less to your off stick side and a little more to your stick side, which down this alley, I think can be a good thing for you guys as goalies. All right. Do things that work in your favor a little bit. I think this is one spot where I still think Caton here is getting to the pipe very early. Okay. And you'll see, even as this shooter gets very deep here, right, there's just a lot of net to shoot at. All right. And it doesn't matter in today's game with how fast guys shoot. That right there, coming down the alley, right, with hands free, that's a lot of net to give up. All right. So Caton can still be off the pipe a little bit here. I would say Caton has to get to the pipe probably. The shooter's winding up, so I would stay in my stance. But if this was a ball carrier here, I'm fine. Or as the shooter, I'm fine making this save without having ever gotten to the pipe. All right, now once he starts to get down kind of in this area, the 15-yard line, you have to get to the pipe. All right, but I'm good making this save right here, still kind of off the pipe, just squared up to him as the shooter. All right, and giving up a little less of this stick side. All right, but still favoring my off stick side slightly. Because if he had stayed in the center of the cage here a little bit more, just slightly off that pipe, right, that ball is going right to his stick. Okay, small movement to try to make that stick side high. And I'm not saying he would have made the save because it's a great shot, but at least then he puts himself in a little bit better of a position to make the save. All right. Does anyone have any questions about this clip in particular?
So you're saying you wouldn't have moved if you were already in your landmark, you wouldn't have adjusted?
This is kind of a unique situation because the Dodger gets very deep. But from here, if I set up well in my top left spot, I can stay in that spot until probably there. And then you might just have to I would just make a slight adjustment just to stay square to the shooter and really take away that far side. Because even if he shoots near side, yeah, you don't want to give up quite as much of the near side, but even if he shoots near side, right, I guarantee he's not going to be shooting with this kind of velocity and accuracy if you're forcing him to stick that ball to the near side. So it becomes an easier save. So I would say, for me, if I were playing this, I would get in my top left spot off the dodge, and I would hold, and I would let him take that shot with me just squared up to him, trying to keep my foot off the pipe. And I realize this is a bit of an awkward clip because it's a shot deep down the alley, but I think it's a really good example because it kind of shows all the way down the alley that you can really hold that top corner position for a long time before you have to get to the pipe. I would really start to get to the pipe once they cross the 15-yard line. But I think the biggest piece to take away is because Caton starts on the pipe, he ends up getting really tight and kind of scrunched up on the pipe because he feels like he's got to move, but there's nowhere to move to. Okay.
Coach, you would prefer his inside foot back a little bit there too, like you talked about earlier?
So he gets to a point here. So yes, and this is something that Caton and I have talked about since this season ended. He does play with his top foot very high, and that's something he needs to adjust. If he's off the pipe here, so if we're starting from scratch, if he's off the pipe here and he's squared up to the shooter, naturally this top foot will be back further because because he's watching his shoulders to be square. And if his shoulders are squared, naturally his feet will be repositioned to be more square to the shooter. So that top foot won't quite be so far high. It would sit back a little further.
Coach, correct me if I'm wrong, but before the shot came, he kind of did like a little dip and like got out of the way of the ball a little bit. And like I find myself doing that a lot. What's the best way to like avoid that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think it's something is even at the highest levels, right? You see it with Caton and you see it in the pro game too. A lot of goalies do this. I think in this case, it happens because he gets really scrunched up against the pipe because he got there so early and gets scrunched up. But in general, the biggest thing I can say is you have to learn to be patient and you have to learn to be relaxed. The more relaxed you can be and the more patient you can be, the looser your body will be. The more tense you get, the more you hitch, right? You can kind of tell in his body language here, right? Like right there, Caton's relaxed. He's in a good stance. He's in a good position. But now as the ball comes down, he knows he's not in a good position and he knows he's too high. And you see how he tenses up, right? See how from there to there and through the shot, he gets really tense, especially right there. You can see he gets really tense. And this is where I would say, think about where you have your weight distributed on your feet. If my hands or my feet here and you're really heavy on your toes, right? When shooters start to shoot, if you tense up the slightest bit, you start to come forward and kind of crumble a little bit. Whereas if you're really balanced with your feet and you have a lot of weight on your midfoot, it's easier to stay balanced. So the biggest thing I can say for that is you have to train yourself to stay relaxed and stay patient. Because when you start to press for saves or you start to get tight, that's when you start to have a lot of those bad habits. All right, we're going to run through these last few examples so we have some time for questions. This is an example of Kyle Bernlohr here from the championship game in 2016. So we'll run through this. All right, dodge down the lefty alley. See, and I like this because he is a bit of a different style. He plays a little higher. So for you goalies who like to play a little bit higher, but the biggest thing, watch, he never gets to the pipe. He stays towards the center of the cage a little more, and it becomes a very easy save. All right, this is the one I was talking about earlier, playing it in slow-mo here for you guys, where Kyle's a lefty. So he knows he's got – and Kyle does it a little too much here, right? I think if he didn't know Connor Buzik's tendencies so much and Buzik was more of a diverse shooter, he could have put it near side. So this is an exaggerated example of down the alley, Kyle giving up some more to his stick side down the alley. But again, he does it a little bit too much here, but it's a good visual. There are times if your sticks to the inside pipe, you can give up a little bit more down the alley and take away the far side. But see, he eats up the far side because he gives up a little more room to his stick side and holds on the pipe. Far side. There's another Bernlohr example. And again, you can just see off the dodge, he never rushed to the pipe. Right, he's able to get a piece of it. And on this save, in this case, it turns out to be a shot kind of at his left foot, whereas if he were on the pipe here, he would really have to reach. And he gets a piece of it, trickles off the pipe, and stays out. But if he were to be on the pipe here, this would have become a very long, difficult save. But because he's staying more in the center of the cage, it's an easy save, and he never has to reach for the ball.
Is that why like all these like really good goalies like don't really have to go into like the splits to make saves and like all these like crazy positions?
Yeah, there's two parts to that, or probably three. One is they're all very good at playing positioning. like the best ones in the world. Like I don't know how many of you guys out there watch like Drew Adams. Drew Adams lives on the pipes, so he makes a lot of saves by doing the splits or reaching with his hands. Guys like Trevor Tierney or Caton or Bernlor, they don't play the pipes too much, so as a result, they catch a lot of things in the center of their body. Right? They don't have to reach for a lot. They don't have to kick their legs way out. They make a lot of saves within the frame of their body, and they're able to take very controlled steps because they play really good positioning.
I think it's Burnmore, but he does something. I think it's like he baits a lot. Like he tries to force the shooter to one side more than the other. Like either stick side or like crease shots.
So he's not a baiter, but he's one of those guys. So there's kind of two ways to go about like thought process of playing the position from a mental standpoint. One is not watching film and just being reactive, just waiting for the ball and seeing it out of shooter sticks. The other, and what Kyle does, and he's very good at it, is you scout, right? You scout where guys like to shoot the ball. You scout tendencies, you scout percentages, and you play based on those percentages. So like that first clip of Connor Busick I showed you down the alley, yes, Kyle was further over because he wanted to give up a little more to the stick side. I can go back to the clip here. But Kyle's so far over because he knows Connor Busick, every single shot he takes goes to this far pipe. So not only is Kyle staying off the pipe because he knows he's got a stick here, right? And if he was playing solely on that, he would probably be about right here where my mouse is with that front foot. Right? But he's over-exaggerating because he knows Busick's going to shoot the ball to this far spot just based on tendencies. So he's someone who likes to read tendencies. And he's very good at it. It's just kind of a preference thing, what works better for you mentally. This last one here, this is just a sweep to the center of the cage. Pretty simple. Because Tim doesn't start on the pipe out of the dodge, it's a very short movement to get to the center of the cage. Right? And again, if he were on the pipe there, that would have been a big movement and it would have been harder. And then you see he gets a nice lateral drive off his back foot, right, and makes a beautiful off stick hip save. Okay, beautiful save, beautiful drive off the ball or behind the ball.